Hi guys, thanks for joining me today. I'm Marilyn and my channel is Making with Marilyn. Now about a week ago, I saw Mr. Crafty Pants use some scorching paste and he made a wood product that turned out really cute. The product that he used wasn't available currently, and so I got on the Amazon and I found a similar one, and that's what I'm going to use today. Now I tried this product out on my YouTube live last Thursday night. And it worked well, but I had some issues. So I'm going to go ahead and do a full tutorial to show you how to use it. So in addition to the Scorch paste, I'm going to use a vinyl stencil that I cut out of Oracal 631 with my Cricut Maker. Once I cut it out, I'm going to go ahead and transfer it to my wood blank using some transfer tape from HTV Ront. After I get it put on my wood blank, I'll add the Scorch paste, I'll remove the vinyl, and then I'm going to use this embossing gun as my heat source. Now on the live that I did, I tried 4 different heating tools, and this is the one that I like the best. So other things, I have some basic supplies, a brayer, some scissors, a couple of squeegees or scrapers. I'm going to start by actually sanding my wood. That's going to help in the process. Once I've sanded it down, I'm going to clean it with a paper towel, and then I'll get the rest of the dust off with a microfiber cloth. After I do the project, I'm going to seal it. I'm going to either seal it with mineral oil or a spray sealant. I'm going to test the mineral oil on the project that I did the other night. If it works well, I'll use it. If it doesn't, then I'll use the spray sealer instead. Once the project's ready to be hung on the wall, I have some twine. So if you're interested in this type of project, sit back, relax, and let's get started. Now, if you want to see what I learned in my live, I will have an end screen in this video. You can just click on it and you can go to that live and see what else I did in that video that might help you out along the way. Now, the first thing that this says to do is it tells you to go ahead and sand your wood. This is a pretty smooth wood, but on my first project that I did on a live video, I did have some bleeding. And the sanding helps get your vinyl down really smoothly, and that should help with the bleeding. So I'm going to go ahead and do a light sanding, and then I'll clean this board. All right, I'm going to call that good. Now, it does say to make sure that you clean your board off, because some of that dust could keep this from working as well. So the first thing that I'm going to do is just go ahead and wipe it with a paper towel to try to get most of that dust off. And then I'm going to go ahead and use this microfiber cloth just to get all of it off. Now let's go ahead and get our vinyl ready. This is our stencil. And something that I actually did in this one was I used a weeding box, or I wouldn't even call it a weeding box. Basically, it's a box that's going to block all parts of my wood so that I can't drop bits and pieces of this Scorch paste on it. I did that on the first time I used it also. That didn't have a good outcome. So let's go ahead and flip this over and remove my vinyl. Now this is Oracal 631. It's a removable vinyl. Whoops. Now when you're doing a stencil, you actually weed backwards to kind of what's logical. So typically, you want to weed away all the excess and you want to keep your words. Well, in this case, I want to take my words out because that's where the paste is going to go. Now, one thing about this vinyl is it cuts super nicely and it weeds very easily. And so this is going to go pretty quickly. Now, when I get down to the smaller pieces, I need to be a little bit more careful because there's some little bitty centers of these letters, and I want to make sure that those stay down. All right, it stayed down. And then there's a small center in the E, and it stayed down as well. For weeding the rest of this, I'm just going to fast forward through it. All right, had a problem there. That center, the A came up. That was going too fast. So let me get all these other letters off my left hand and then I'll put that back down. Okay, let's just flip that back over, lay it back down into place, lining it up as best as I can. That looks good. I'm just going to kind of push it down with my fingernail. Hopefully it stays down this time. And it did. I have my HTV Ront transfer tape, and it was just a little bit stickier than I wanted it to be to get this to lay down. This vinyl, with it being removable or repositionable, it doesn't stick down to the board all that well. And so if this is very sticky, it's going to be hard to get it off of this once you put this down on your board. You'll see that in a minute. But to try to fix that, to try to fix it at least a little bit, I want to make this a little bit less sticky. So I'm just going to put it on my t-shirt or my sweatshirt a couple times to do that. So if you see a little bit of lint on here, that's why. Now I cut my transfer tape just a little bit larger than my vinyl. And I want to go ahead and try to get this down really smoothly. So let's just use this squeegee to smooth it down. Okay. So I'm going to remove the back off of the vinyl. And again, I want to go fairly slowly to make sure those centers stay down. The A did, the P's did, the little O part did. So far, so good. Okay, that worked out well. Now I want to try, okay, I want to try to have the black vinyl just beyond the wood blank in all four directions. So here's what I'm thinking. Maybe, just maybe, I want to do it from the back side. I think I'll go ahead and lay this one side down and then flip it over. There we go. And that way I can make sure it lays down nice. Nice and flat. And smooth. Okay, that looks nice. Now, because you're only going to have your paste where the wood is exposed, if you have bubbles in the vinyl out here, that is not a big deal. But if you have any bubbles where the words touch the vinyl, you really have to smooth those out. I'm not going to worry about it now. I think they look great now, but once I start peeling this transfer tape up, that vinyl can lift up. It's just a little bit of a difficult process. So let's go ahead and take it off first, and then we'll deal with any bubbles or lumps that we get. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to hold this vinyl down with one hand. And I don't know if you can see, but that is really lifting up. Can you see how much that is lifting up? The vinyl just doesn't want to stay put on this wood very easily. It doesn't want to bond to it. Again, it's a repositionable vinyl. But I think if you tried to use a permanent vinyl, you would have a very hard time getting it off the wood. So that's why I'm using this vinyl. Now see where this H wants to come up? I'm going to push down with my scraper and then pull that way with my transfer tape. And that helps keep that down. And then even though you can use transfer tape over and over, I may end up cutting some of this back just so I don't have to deal with it. I don't want it to fall back down on my vinyl over and over to make me have to fight with it. We'll just see. So far this is going pretty nicely. Again, I'm pushing down with this hand while I'm pulling back with my left hand. Now, that's starting to come up, so now I'm going to go ahead and start cutting some off. That way I can really focus in on the areas that need the most attention. Time to fast forward. Okay, this is looking pretty good, but I have a couple of problem areas. One is right here because the vinyl is lifted and it would bleed underneath there. Hopefully you can see how that's lifted up some. Right there. I have the same issues down here. So I'm just going to really smooth that out so that the vinyl up against the void has really good contact with the wood. That is necessary to keep the bleed from happening. Now you can see where my vinyl's a little bit bunched up right here. I think it's down really well against the wood, but I'm going to be a little bit careful there. I think everything else looks great. So at this time, it's time to go ahead and put this Scorch paste on. I'm going to go ahead and use a glove on my right hand. And then to lift it out of the little bottle, I'm going to use this popsicle stick. After I get it on here, I'm going to use a squeegee to make sure it's really nice and thin. You're supposed to just use a really thin coat. And when I was on my live doing my first project, somebody told me if it's not real thin, it starts to bubble when you heat it up. And I did have a couple of areas where that happened. So I need to try to do a little bit better job today. Now, I really like how I covered the whole thing with vinyl. That is protecting my wood much better than when I did my first project. I'm going to show you that first project in a little bit. I didn't want to show it to you at the start because I was afraid you'd think, well, she doesn't know what she's doing. I'm not going to watch. And that first project was just a good learning lesson. This one, hopefully, will turn out so much better. But taking all these precautions, if it doesn't, then that's something you need to know, that it's hard to work with. But I have really high hopes for this. So I'm just going to lay some of this down. And then when it's time to remove some of it and to smooth it out, then I'll come back to normal speed. Now that I have that whole thing covered, and I see a little spot down here that I think might need just a little bit more. But now that I have the whole thing covered, I'm going to go ahead and squeegee this so that it is a really thin, even layer. And then what I did before, I took all this excess and I put it right back into the container. Hopefully that's okay. If any of you have any experience with this part of the project, let me know. But it looks just the same as everything else. I think it's okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and wipe the excess off, and then I'll squeegee it one more time. Now the instructions say to let this sit, I believe it said 30 to 90 seconds. Yes, it says 30 to 90 seconds. Some of it has already set for 30 seconds. And when I did my first project, I let it sit longer than 30 to 90 seconds, at least a couple minutes, and that worked out fine. So that's what I'll do here too. Okay, I don't want to leave it on too long because I'm afraid if it gets too dry, maybe that doesn't work as well. So I'm going to go ahead and peel this up. Now I want to be really careful that if I got any of it on my glove, that I'm not touching my glove back down to the board. Now it's time to just take those little parts and pieces out. And right here, it looks like there's not any on the wood. See in the E where it looks lighter? Now I don't know what to do. Dab some on there or just go for it and see how it turns out. I think I'm going to do that, because I'm afraid if I dab some on there, then I can't squeegee it. And then it'll be thick, and then it will bubble. So we're going to go with this and see how it looks. Now, when I did this on my live, I tried out 4 different types of heat sources. I tried just a regular blow dryer. That did not work. I tried 2 embossing guns. This was one of them. They both worked. And then I tried your true heat gun, the one that you might keep out in your garage, and it worked as well. It was heavy though, and this is not. So this is my favorite one to use for this, but you could use any of those, just not that blow dryer. Now I want to hold this up in the air because I don't want to get a ton of heat on my cutting mat because it will warp it. So I'm going to hold this up. I'm going to hopefully have an angle where you can see it. And I'm just going to hover around parts of this, going in circles and moving around. You're going to see it go from this really yellow to a medium and then eventually to a really dark brown. And you can stop anywhere along the way once you like how it looks. I'm going to get mine really dark. Now I can see a little bit of bleed on that E, but it's not terrible. All right, let me stop right here. I want you to see that is starting to turn. But I want it a lot darker. Now that is exactly what I want. So I'm going to go ahead and keep doing this across the whole thing. And it's going to take a few minutes. You saw how long it took for that. As the heat starts building up, I did think it started going a little bit faster, but it's going to take a few minutes. So I'm going to fast forward through a lot of this, but you're going to see exactly how this turns. Now remember that place that I was worried about in the E? It did not turn at all. So I am going to put a little bit on there and see if that works. Also, I didn't do a very good job down here. Look at the amount of bleed on that. Let's see if we can't just dab a little bit on that E. Let it dry for just a little bit, and then we'll hit that again and see what happens. Now what I'm wondering is, did I leave that last one sit too long before I squeegeed it? And then when I squeegeed it, did a dry piece fleck all the way off? I don't know. Maybe that's what happened. Well, in any event, that fixed it. Now, I can see a tiny bit of bubbling there. I had it on thicker than I did the other parts. I don't know if you'll see it, but let me lift that up. I really want you to see this close and personal. Look how bad that word place looks. But that's controlled by me, and I just didn't do a very good job there. Now it says to put some type of sealer on it. And let me read here. A wood wax oil, something like that, to protect the finish. Now here's the one that I did yesterday. And I really had a lot of bleeding. And I dropped some of that paste on my board. That's why I went ahead and covered the whole thing this time. And I really haven't touched it since then. Now I can tell though, because during my live, I kind of wiped across one of these and some of that wood burning came off on my hand. Well, now it doesn't seem to be doing this. So maybe after it sits for a while, it doesn't. Well, there I got some off of it. I'm not so sure that a wood finishing oil or wax that you have to rub on it's a great idea. I don't know. So I'm going to use this one that looks terrible. And I'm going to put a little bit of mineral oil on it. That's what people put on their cutting boards. And so I'm going to see if that works. If it does, I'll probably use it on my new one. If it doesn't work, I'm going to use a spray sealer on it instead. Now it'd be better to use a cloth that isn't going to leave lint and such. Okay, that's what I thought would happen. Look at that. It just rubs that burned part all over it. That looks terrible. That looks really, really terrible. Now, if it would have worked, it makes the burn part look beautiful. But it doesn't work. So I don't think you want to rub a wood wax over this. I really don't. I have a couple products that I could use instead. One is a satin clear sealer. One is this Mod Podge matte sealer. I'm going to go ahead and spray some of this on it. Now I'm not going to do it in here. I like to do it outside. So let me run and do that. And then I'll bring it back and show you what it looks like. I went outside, I sprayed it, and then I let it dry just about 15 minutes. And here is the final result. It's not perfect. I have bleeding. I have things I don't like. But the Scorch paste does work really well. You just have to be careful with how you prep it and how you actually apply it. Then also, one thing I hadn't thought about was if you let it dry too long, then it can flake off, like I'm pretty sure that's what that did. So don't wait longer than those 30 to 90 seconds. Now, this isn't a perfect project, but I'm still going to go ahead and hang it up in my house. And so I'm just going to take some twine, make a little knot. Hopefully that knot is larger than the hole. I think it's good enough. place it through this side, and then I probably want it to be something like that. So let's go ahead and tie a knot over here as well, trim it off, and then we are done. So there it is, and it looks pretty nice. I see some pros and I see some cons of this. Cons are you do have to be extremely careful. Just like if you're painting a stencil, you have to be extremely careful that your stencil is down tight. Also, just by the very nature of wood, some areas are going to look a little bit lighter than others. That is just the nature of wood. On the plus side, if you are to engrave this with an actual laser, engraving takes a lot of time. This went pretty quickly. So as far as a time factor goes, I think it's a great product. Now, if you're interested in trying it out for yourself, I do have a link to this product in the video description. That is an affiliate link, so if you use it, you don't pay more for the product, but I do receive a small commission. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and until my next video, bye-bye.